Welcome to Looking at Lyme, an educational podcast of the Canadian Lyme Disease Foundation, designed to increase awareness, empower listeners with expert knowledge, and explore solutions. I'm Kim Cairns. In this podcast, we talk with Dr. Nicoletta Faraone, a chemical ecologist and natural product chemist. Dr. Faraone is an associate professor in the chemistry department at Acadia University, where she teaches biochemistry and natural product chemistry. Her research focuses on studying how ticks detect odors from hosts and how they respond to repellents. She designs and develops novel, essential, oil-based tick repellent products using nanotechnology. Since 2019, Dr. Faraone has supervised more than 50 students, technicians, research assistants, postdocs, and has received more than 2 million Canadian dollars to support her research. Thank you for joining us today, Dr. Faraone.
Thank you for having me.
I'm interested to hear what in the world drew you to the world of ticks?
That's an interesting question. I work with arthropods. During my postdoctoral studies and my PhD, I try to find alternatives to manage pests using natural products. The encounter with ticks happened when I joined Acadia. And it was actually a very interesting event because I was interested in exploring a new pest to manage. And I was approached by a Nova Scotia company, Atlantic, came to Acadia with the interest to validate their product, testing their product, supervised by science and using a scientific approach. And I was recruited for that particular project. And I was very intrigued by ticks because they're understudied, I would say. At that time, was 2017, 2018, especially the Maritime provinces were experiencing a very huge increase in Lyme cases. It was for me a call to try to understand how this pest work and how we can use alternative ways to manage it that maybe doesn't imply the utilization of pesticide and synthetic pesticide. And ticks are fascinating, although they are transmitting a series of diseases.
And how did you get into tick prevention?
I really believe that prevention is better than curing. And we know how bad Lyme disease is, together with other diseases that they transmit. So why don't you avoid that and releasing the pressure on the healthcare system and maybe teaching people more on understanding ticks, doing tick check, wearing right clothing, wearing right repellents, and be aware of them. There is not really the understanding that these are pests and these are animals that they live in our environment. So we just need to be aware of them and be able to, live with them and avoiding any contact and any interactions.
I'm under the understanding that ticks smell. Can you explore that a bit with us?
Yes, so are almost totally blind. So they don't really rely on vision to actually detect their host and find a suitable blood meal. So they really use olfaction. They have a very interesting chemiosensory systems. So these are organs specifically tuned to detect certain chemicals that will help ticks to find the host. And these chemicals are like CO2, so the air that we exhale, certain smells that are associated to microbes and sweat and urine, as well as other chemical cues that can be associated to a specific host related, to the environment where the host usually live. Other cues can be heat. They are able to detect heat irradiation and humidity. It's another important element that, especially when we have a humid environment and a right temperature, ticks will be very active. So the smell component is very important. And this is what I'm trying to study specifically in the development of new repellents, because they detect repellents through olfaction. So we can avoid contact and reducing tick bite in that way.
Can you tell us how they smell? Like, what's the process like?
one of the big questions of my research program because I can tell you that there is a lot of research that's been done on insects, and there is a good understanding how the insect olfactory system works. But ticks are no insect, right? They are arachnid, and they don't have the same organs. They smell in a different way. So first of all, they don't have antennae, but they have 8 legs like spiders. They have an organ located on the foretarsi, which are basically their legs. This organ is called Haller's organs and house different type of receptors that will interact with the different chemicals. And the process of smelling is actually called questing. So basically ticks are climbing tall grass or location where they can be exposed, and their weight, their foretarsi, during this process called questing, try to capture in the air, wherever chemicals come from. And in this way, they can kind of understand where a potential host can be, a deer that is passing by, a human, or a dog, or a cat, or so on. So for me, lab to try to measure it or recorded this process, it's kind of tricky because I use a technique called electrophysiology, which basically is based on connecting the tick to electrodes. When the tick responds to certain chemical, I can record an electrical signal. So I can basically measure their brain activity linked to the specific chemicals. The process is also related to concentration. So I know that when they smell a lot, they will respond a lot.
That's fascinating. So with this tiny little arachnid, you get electrodes attached to the legs. Can you explain how chemistry relates to smelling?
Every organism, I would say, have specific receptors, and they are responding to certain chemicals and certain stimuli that come from the environment. Now, we as humans, we have receptors that are able to detect lights, detect heat, detect smells. Volatile molecules, so chemicals that are able to be in the air, that are detected by these receptors. So when those chemicals are able to interact, there will be a certain chemical signal electrical signal sent to the brain that will induce a response, and it will make us basically smell that particular compound. For us, it's an important sense together with others like taste and ear and sound and so on. But for certain organisms like ticks, for example, it's very important, as well as for other insects, because it's the way how communication works between organisms.
Fascinating. I'm envisioning these ticks questing on the grass, low down, and an animal or a human brushing by, and the tick can move that fast. So the hunting process is different based on the species that we are considering. Now, the blackleg tick, Ixodes scapularis, which is the main vector in North America of the causative agent of Lyme disease, he's more like a passive hunter, in a sense that this tick is usually hanging around on tall grass or in vegetation, in places where there's not really direct sunlight because they don't like that much, and they are waiting for a potential host to pass him by. Similarly, the American dog tick does also that. So they like very much tall grasses, and they hang there with their foretarsi open, waiting. But there are other ticks that are very much more aggressive. And this is, for example, the Lone Star tick, which is the tick that causes the so-called meat allergy, which is not is established yet in Canada, but there have been cases where it was detected in Ontario, and there are not certain cases in Nova Scotia because it can be brought by migratory birds. Now, this tick hunt and go fast, really runs after the potential host when detects one. So it depends on the species that we are looking at. They're coming north in conjunction with climate change?
Yes. So ticks, like generally speaking, a very warm but not too hot. Ideal temperature for ticks would be they are active higher than 4 degrees Celsius, and they have the optimal range between 12 degrees, 25 degrees Celsius. When it's too hot, they don't like that. And they also like a very humid environment. When it's too dry, it's not optimal for them. What we are experiencing is, yes, this movement of tick population up north, but there is as well differentiation in the population in the south because climate are becoming too dry for them. So there is also this change. And it's also linked to the changes in the potential host and the movement of the host. So I had many people reporting the presence of ticks also in urban areas, which is kind of unusual if you think about it, in parks in the middle of cities. Well, this is also linked to the increment of the population density and the fact that deers and other hosts are way more, let's say, involved in the urban life. So they naturally bring ticks also in a backyard that maybe are in the middle of the city. And this is kind of unexpected. It's just we need to be aware of that we're going to more and more experiencing the increment of tick population.
How do you go about collecting ticks for your research?
I'm lucky enough to have a lot of students interested in this. So tick collection is actually an interesting way to do it because you cannot really set traps that will attract ticks and then just collect them. You use something called the dragging method, which is basically using flannel cloth. Usually they are the size of 1 meter square, and they are connected to basically a rope. You walk on trails and location where you are suspecting to have ticks, and you drag this cloth on the ground, and you check every 5 meters or so, and you want it to have a white. So basically you flip it over, and then you will see the ticks in there because they can get attached to it.
So then you remove them from the sheet or the cloth, yes.
From the cloth with the tweezers, we collect them in vials and we bring them back to the lab. And interesting, when we bring back to the lab, we need to treat them because since they are in the wild, they might also carry pathogen or they can carry potential microorganism that can kill them. I mean, for my research, I need to keep them alive. What we do, we give them a bath. So we wash them. We wash them with a solution with water, bleach, and ethanol. And I can tell you, they survive. We wash them and we keep them in a Tupperware container in the fridge.
In the fridge?
Yes. We keep them in the fridge. If they're kept in a sterile condition, they can be there up to 1 year. Without any food, they can survive. They are very, very resilient.
That's amazing. And somewhat alarming that they can last for a year without an intake. I'm just going to shift gears here a bit. What do you recommend to people who find an embedded tick? What's the process for removing that tick?
I read so many weird approaches to this, like setting the tick on fire or putting ethanol, or I wish that I can show you the picture of the tick mouth part. I'll try to describe it. The tick mouth part has a very peculiar shape. It looks like a sear, like has dent, and is supposed to be able to penetrate into the skin and get anchored in the skin. Now, you can imagine that if you're pulling out the tick without really thinking, what is going to happen is that the mouth part will be detached from the head and it will stay inside your skin. And you don't want that. Also, through the process, you might squeeze the tick, and what's inside the tick is going to be injected in your skin. A good procedure is there are specific tools that can be found, in a pet store and can be bought online. They look like a hook that is going to be inserted underneath the tick and is going to be twisted around, and it will gently remove the tick without actually leaving the mouth part attached to your skin. After it's removed, the tick that it's embedded, if it's engorged, be very good to save the tick and have it tested.
I want to clarify.
Yes.
When they're embedded, they're hooked back.
It goes to lift the tick from underneath and then gently removing it. In cases it's really embedded in your skin, I would recommend it to go to the emergency because it might require specific tools to do it.
If I'm a dog owner, I'm checking every time I take my dog for a walk.
Yes, exactly, because the majority of the cases of tick bites has been linked to pets that they are bringing ticks inside the house. That's why it's very important to make sure that your pets are also treated or protected, doing your tick check every time you are spending time outdoors.
So theoretically, a tick could come in on a dog and then attach to a human.
Usually, if they are, so it can come on a dog and it basically crawl on the dog, but it doesn't feed on a dog yet and get dropped in the house. So it can encounter whatever host comes by.
What are the symptoms? And I think there's a broad range of symptoms, but what are the key symptoms that people should be paying attention to and when they don't know whether they've been bitten by a tick or not?
It's a very tricky question because unfortunately, Lyme disease is a very sneaky disease that has a different forms and different way to manifest, as well as there are different timing when it shows up on people. So there is this so-called erythema migrans, which is the typical Red Bull eye that people have experienced when they are bitten by blackleg tick. Basically, it's where the bite has taken place. So you have a red spot and then an aura around that it's red, but has been detected in, let's say, 2 cases out of 3. So it's not always showing, and people maybe do not associate it to a tick because the tick may have already fall off. So you don't know. This is maybe, something that people can look at it, but there are other symptoms that might show up after a week, after 2 weeks, after months, because this depends about the ability of the bacteria, the bacterium that is, the name is Borrelia burgdorferi, is able to actually proliferate and develop in the body. And it depends on your immune system, on how you react to it. And people experience different things: joint pain, fever, neurological diseases, heart problems. So it really has so many shades that can take. This has led to also misdiagnosis by doctors that in some cases they didn't even believe that Lyme disease was real. I participated to a couple of panels where patients were talking about their experience, and it's very heartbreaking hearing all these stories that people really suffered for a long time and they were not believed and they could not really, have the right treatment, because what it takes is basically just a course of antibiotic. And in some cases where the bacteria was too spread, they needed to get antibiotics by IV. They suffer damage that was not able to be repaired anymore.
So it's the combination of individualized response to the tick.
Yes.
And an awareness on the part of doctors about the range of symptoms.
Yes.
I don't believe that that's general knowledge in a med school. They're not spending a lot of time talking about Lyme disease.
Not really. I would say in the last couple of years, I started working with ticks, and I also dedicated some time to actually giving seminar for the public, talking about tick awareness and so on. I see that people are way more aware of that, and there is a better understanding of what ticks can do and the reason why Lyme disease is so spread. But yes, it still needs to be properly studied and properly linked to certain symptoms.
How do you see doctors improving at tick and Lyme diagnosis?
Just the fact that, for example, we can get antibiotics in our pharmacy if we get a tick bite, I see as an important step. I would say that it would be more important to try to teach people about ticks, making sure that they do their tick check or they wear the proper repellent. I think that would be important. Like prevention, for me, it's an important key to avoid, in the very first place, the transmission of the disease.
Can you tell us about Atlantic, your association with them and how that's going?
I've been working with them since 2017, 2018. It's been a real pleasure to working with them because they really and truly believe in research and the fact that we need to know more about ticks. And will empower us to better protect us against this pest. I'm working with them through the process of understanding ticks and how ticks detect chemicals, as well as helping them to develop new formulation, a new product based on natural products, essential oils that can help us to repel ticks, kill them as well in different forms and in different delivery.
I'm really interested to hear what's the range of essential oils and the scents that you've discovered are effective.
From a research perspective, for me, it's very interesting to try all the possible essential oils. But from a commercial perspective, you want to get something that is relatively cheap and also safe for humans. Because for a compound or a chemical or an oil that can induce a response on a tick that can be, interesting from a science perspective, might not be applicable for creating personal repellent product, because some of these compounds, some of this oil might lead to skin irritation, or they might not be suitable for humans, or they might be too expensive, or they might be coming from plants that are not easy to get and to use for the extraction. I try to do a different type of selection, and there are oils that like lemongrass or balsam fir or lavender essential oils or lemon eucalyptus. These are essential oils that are relatively safe. They can be potentially used for the production and the development of new formulation. And they also smell nice. Yeah.
They smell a lot better than a lot of historical repellents.
Yes.
Are there other things our listeners have to understand about ticks to keep themselves and their families safe? Can you think of anything that we haven't covered?
Something that it would be important is when we collect ticks, like we remove ticks, one important aspect is don't try to smash them or do anything with them, because this process might lead to contamination with your skin, and you don't want that things that is inside the tick will be in contact with your skin, because it is the potential pathogen inside. Like I said, I talked to people that they were telling me, what do I do? Do I smash it with a stone? Do I cut it with the scissors? And it's not the case. A good way is after you remove them, if you're not intending to send it for testing, it would be good to put it in a vial with ethanol. Ethanol will kill them. Like a general alcohol can be a good way.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Faraone. You've been a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
We'll post links to Dr. Faraone's work in the show notes, including a link to Atlantic, and also links to our tick removal kits and how to safely remove a tick. We'll also include a link to genetics, where people can send their ticks for fast and reliable testing. Thanks for listening, and stay safe in the outdoors.